Hi, my name is Caleb. I am going to talk about a paper that I co-authored with Kelly Smith. It's called Who's Afraid of Little Green Men? And it's about genetic enhancements for off-world settlements. So first, I just want to start out by framing the discussion, which is basically just about the necessity of space colonization. So this famous quote from Carl Sagan sort of sums up the point, which is that eventually we're going to colonize space if we want to continue to advance as a species, continue to grow, and it just seems natural that that's where we're going to end up. But more than that, there are reasons why we can't stay on Earth much longer. Eventually, Earth is going to be uninhabitable for a number of reasons. The first of which is climate change, obviously. Also pollution, and also just human development and urbanization. Even if sort of population growth levels off in the way that many people predict it will, we're still going to have the massive problem that the existing populations here are still going to continue to pollute and degrade the Earth. And that's something that we have to deal with. More than that, we have existential risks to deal with. We have the potential for a meteor impact, a nuclear war, artificial intelligence, or even an epidemic, which, or at least a mild version of which we're experiencing right now. And all these things, all these risks are mitigated by us sort of hedging our bets by having off-world settlements. And so we're going to talk about genetic engineering as a very important instrument that's going to play a key role potentially in allowing off-world settlements to happen. And while it's a nascent technology, it's rapidly developing. And it seems like in the near future, the next few decades, we're going to have a pretty sophisticated genetic enhancement technology. But of course, this raises a number of difficult ethical questions. And in this short presentation, I'm going to address 4 of these. So informed consent, social inequity, discrimination against people with disabilities, and the unnaturalness of genetic enhancement. So first, there's a tricky issue here about how we obtain informed consent from people who are genetically modified before they are capable of giving that consent. So this would be in the case of embryonic genetic enhancement or even enhancement of pre-adolescence. And so we contend that parents should have the ability to make decisions in these cases, as they do in many other cases involving their children, such as risky surgeries. We don't think it's a good idea to let some sort of central authority or institution have this power. And we think that there are many other cases in which parents assume risk on behalf of their children, and this is just another one of those cases. Now to move on to social inequity. It's often a concern when we're talking about genetic enhancement that certain members of society who have wealth and privilege will have disproportionate access to this technology. We don't think this poses a serious issue for off-world settlements for the simple reason that every settler, as a condition of being a settler, will have access to genetic enhancement. And more than that, that genetic enhancement will be required of all settlers. And so while of course money and power are going to play into who can even become a settler in the first place, we think we ought to settle for imperfection rather than waiting a long time until, or perhaps forever, until these societal ills are somehow cured otherwise. And so here's another objection, which is raised by another chapter in this book by Schwartz, which sort of poses an idealism versus our strict pragmatism, which is that we ought to make settlements maximally inclusive for people with disabilities, and we shouldn't require them to get genetic enhancements. Unfortunately, discrimination against people with disabilities is sort of a necessary component of determining who is best for a job in all sorts of circumstances, especially, for example, determining who to hire as a pilot, an airline pilot. We require certain criteria to be met, and people with disabilities often don't meet those criteria. And that's very unfortunate, but we think that it would unduly impinge on our ability to form a settlement if we had this very strict requirement that we had to accept everyone with a disability. And we also think the financial considerations and efficiency and efficacy of a settlement, which is based on genetic enhancement, makes it very difficult to accommodate disabilities in all cases. Finally, there's this objection about naturalness and normality, and also this distinction between enhancement and therapy, where the latter is viewed as acceptable and the former isn't. And we're going to contest the validity of this distinction based on the fact that what counts as enhancement varies with background conditions. In an off-world settlement, enhancement might well be just proactive therapy. Moreover, the disgust or revulsion we feel to what is unnatural is totally morally unjustified. It's just based on sort of an intuitive gut reaction that we don't think ought to guide our moral or ethical decision making. So finally, what would this actually look like? Well, as the title of the paper suggests, we might end up making little green men. They would be smaller because they would consume less food, and they might be green because they might incorporate photosynthetic organisms which can convert light into energy. And what this obviously raises is the possibility of prejudice and racism. But we shouldn't confine ourselves to what we feel is natural or otherwise not strange or weird. We should be open to even these strange and weird possibilities because they might well hold the key to allowing us to establish successful off-world settlements.